as an asset.
Hi, everybody. And, hi, Steve. Let me just share my screen.
Yeah.
I hope you can see my screen.
Yeah, we can see it perfectly.
I'm just going to put it on slideshow mode. So hi, everybody. Some really interesting projects, and we're really privileged to be here to talk about Itheum. My name is Mark Paul. I'm one of the founding members of Itheum. So Itheum aims to be the world's first decentralized cross-chain data brokerage service. The team has been building Itheum for the last 4 months, and we are very excited to share our DAO designs with you today. So let me just go to the next slide. Okay. All right, so I'm going to spend a bit of time to talk about the problem and then what Itheum's trying to do to solve this problem. And essentially, this would highlight the reason why we've designed our DAOs in the way that we're going to present later on. So the problem is that you see in the world today is basically the issue of centralized data brokerage, right? So these first-party data brokers and third-party data brokers, as you see in the screen, they collect, hoard, use, and sell your personal data for profit. And most of this is happening behind the scenes, and you wouldn't even be aware of this, for example. So this is a real issue that we feel that needs to be addressed. And we feel that blockchain technology is the ideal medium to address this problem. All right, so and you could probably wonder why data brokerage is such a so many companies are dealing with it. Well, that's because your personal data, believe it or not, is worth a lot of money. Your health data, for example, is worth $1,500 a year. If it's sold as a part of a data set, it's significantly more valuable. And more critical information like your DNA and your phenotypic data is worth over $7,000 a year. So it's no surprise that the global data brokerage market is sitting at $200 billion per year. All right, so this is the world today with centralized data brokers, right? So on screen here, you see that's you here. You're collecting data you're actually submitting or you're using apps and sort of websites that are built by these big enterprises who are essentially hoarding your data. And you'll see right there in the middle of the screen, you get this wall of data brokers. And what they are basically enabling is for the data to only remain within the one side of the screen, which is kind of where all these centralized big entities are hoarding your data in their silos. On the other side of the screen here, you see all these researchers and small to medium businesses or drug discovery teams. They get very little access to this data. And the outcome of that is, if you can look at the bottom of the screen there, is if you look at data innovations like the early detection of diseases like cancer, or understanding socioeconomic gaps better, or to gain better access to financial aid, a lot of these sort of innovation is now only an exclusive paid product that's put out to market by these big enterprises. So this is the issue of centralized data brokerage, and this is the issue that Itheum collectively aims to solve. So how are we doing this? Well, we have a whole bunch of features which form what we call the data decks. I'm not going to go through all of these features, but there's a few features in there that I've highlighted in a gray circle that is relevant to this discussion about the DAOs that we have built. So one of those features is called the data coalitions, which allows for the grouped bulk sale of personal data. We got another feature called peer-to-peer sales, which allows you to sell data directly to a seller in a peer-to-peer manner. We got the concept of data NFTs, which lets you wrap your personal data as an NFT, mint limited versions of it, and earn royalties on resale. And at the bottom there, we have this concept of data vaults, which lets you sell your really sensitive personal information that you wouldn't generally just go and sell it openly. So these features and the other features you see up there work in unison. And when they work together, they enable for the seamless flow of data from the data generator, which is you, to the data buyers. And then this allows for more sort of open data innovation. All right, so now we're heading into the more sort of DAO-based discussion about how Itheum utilizes DAOs. So Itheum fundamentally has a two DAOs, right? Or actually, there's more, but in its core entity, there's two DAOs. We have the Foundation DAO, and this is for the overall platform governance. And secondly, and more importantly, we have the concept of data coalition DAOs. Now, data coalition DAOs, there can be n number of data coalition DAOs, because as if you remember my previous slide, data coalitions sell data in bulk. So there can be different types of coalitions for different types of data. So each one of those coalitions is a DAO, and the Foundation DAO is essentially a DAO of DAOs, because it's responsible for the governance of all these individual decentralized autonomous organizations, which are data coalition DAOs. Okay, so now let's just kind of focus into what our data coalitions are, and then we'll go into the design of the actual DAO. So like I was talking about, the data coalitions are DAOs by themselves, and they enable the autonomous bulk sale of personal data. Now, there can be different types of data coalitions. There could be, and they're usually niched segment or region-based bulk sellers of data. For example, there can be a health and wellness data coalition, a financial data coalition, or even regional, right? So there could be an EU-based marketing data coalition, which only allows for the sale of data in the EU region. Data creators are just you and me. We can be anybody, and we can choose to align to a data coalition. And a data coalition can sell different types of data. It can sell data sets, it can sell data packs, or very interestingly, it can sell this thing called a data NFT, which is a concept that we have actually pioneered. So there will be a network of data coalitions, like I mentioned. So Itheum is essentially a DAO of DAOs. Now, in future, data coalitions will be able to trade amongst themselves, and even be connected to autonomous machines, right? So, for example, variables could trade with other data coalitions. They could supply and buy electric vehicles, would also participate in such a data economy. Now we're heading more into the DAO design. So our data coalition DAOs actually modeled after real-world credit unions. So you would be familiar with the concept of a credit union. This is not a blockchain concept. It's a real-world concept. It's one of the oldest institutions that essentially looks after a fund of money on behalf of its members' best interest, unlike a bank, which is a central sort of entity run by centrally controlled people. Credit unions are quite sort of an interesting decentralized model in the real world. So our data coalition DAOs essentially have a chair, which is the creator of the coalition. We have board members who are delegated representatives of the coalition. And then we have members, which are you and me, and we can kind of share our data. And we also get people who can stake as well as members. So interestingly, you don't have to actually, if you want to participate in the Itheum's ecosystem, you don't have to sell your data. You can actually enter the data DEX, and you can stake into existing coalitions. And staking is a flag to indicate the confidence score that the data actually contains, which is an interesting idea. Okay, so now we're going to go into the more detailed DAO designs of Itheum. Okay, so the first DAO that we have is called the Itheum Foundation DAO, or the IF DAO. We only have a single Itheum Foundation DAO, and its responsibility is the governance of the Itheum platform, and it's also the DAO of DAOs. So you can stake MIDA into that. MIDA is a utility token, and you receive governance token in return relative to your stake amount, as well as the length of your stake. So it's not just pure stake amount, it's actually calculated based on the length of your stake as well. Now, your stake MIDA is held in a foundation pool. And one of the most important design decisions here is that you can exit anytime. So you're not locked in. It's not like a bond where you are bonded for a certain time. You can exit anytime, and this is very important, and I'll explain why shortly. So holding the governance token gives you voting rights on proposals. Our voting is by direct democracy, so there's a quorum-based voting here. So it's the simplest, most robust, battle-tested system on the blockchain space at the moment now. So one of the main responsibilities of the IF DAO, or the Foundation DAO, is to maintain the product roadmap. So our roadmap is fully public. You can actually go and have a look at it in the URL there. And the IF DAO decides which feature is worked on when, and which feature does the core team work on. So as I mentioned, the decision making is via proposals. An example would be they can update the quorum percentage that is required for a proposal to pass They can approve, they will approve new data coalition applications. So if you want to start a new data coalition, you need to apply, and this DAO will approve it. They manage core data coalition parameters like the minimum or maximum members of a coalition, the minimum fees to join a coalition, etc. They set the Harburger tax rate on coalitions managing data NFTs. So if you're familiar with what this Harburger tax rate is, it's to make sure that people don't hoard their data, and essentially to make sure that their data is always on sale. So this makes creates a very interesting dynamic where really important and interesting data is constantly being traded. The next thing is that it manages the key pool parameters for the personal data vault, and it manages the node parameters for our trusted computation framework. So those two are quite in-depth topics, which I'm happy to talk about in a separate discussion. So the risks of this DAO design is, of course, when you're talking about quorum-based DAOs, you always have the governance lock. So what happens if you don't reach the quorum? So you'll have proposals essentially just sitting there. So that's always a problem. And also with this kind of design, you get whale dominance, where maybe potentially people who have more MIDA, who are willing to stake for a long time, would dominate the voting, which is also not very good. Okay, so now we're jumping into our second DAO design, which is our data coalitions DAO design. So as I was mentioning, each data coalition DAO is actually an independent entity, and there can be n number of data coalition DAOs within the Itheum ecosystem. So how do you start a data coalition and DAO? So well, anybody can fill an application form to start a data coalition DAO. You need to do that. You need to stake bond your MIDA. So when I say stake bond, it's not a stake or a bond, it's both. In other words, you have to make sure your MIDA is locked in for a certain amount of time, and you could potentially lose that MIDA as part of the fund pool that I'm talking about below there. So the foundation DAO needs to approve each application. The approved application fee then goes into a DC fund pool. The DC fund pool is then used for arbitration and dispute resolution in contentious sales of data. So imagine you're selling your data through a coalition. The buyer buys it and he uses it for something that he's not supposed to, or maybe the quality of the data was bad. You get a contentious sale of data. So you need some sort of fund pool to do dispute resolution. That's what this is used for. The submitter of the data, the new data coalition, becomes the chair and the first board member in that coalition. And one of his responsibilities, he sets the initial parameters. He or she sets the initial parameters of the data coalition. In other words, this is the minimum or maximum members. What are the fees to join the coalition as a board member? What are the terms of sale of the data within the coalition and the sale price, etc. So once that's done, anybody can then come and link their data and align to a data coalition that they feel is suited to them, and then they can join as a member. And they can optionally stake MIDA as well. So that's an optional thing, but they can do that as well. Now the bonders, in this case, the board members, keep in mind that they're bonding, so they cannot take off their MIDA at any time. And the stakers, which are the members who are joining to sell their data, receive share tokens in relative to what they're putting in. And then what that's used for is basically the members and board members get a majority share of each sale that the coalition handles. And then a minority sale of each data that's sold could be then sent to people who don't stake as well. And also the other important part here is the high reputation data creator. So if they are submitting good data and they're being flagged as high reputation data, they earn more share tokens as well. Okay, so how does voting happen? Well, unlike the other DAO, in the data coalition, only board members can vote on motions, and this is representative democracy. And also very interesting, like Malak DAO, of course, it is permission entry for new board members. So not anybody can become a board member. Existing board members need to recommend you via a motion. And when the existing board members vote you in, then you are now a board member. And there is not an infinite amount of board members. There's actually a ceiling or a max amount of board members as well. And voting here is by simple majority, so there's no quorum. And the reason it is so is that because we need fast decisions on data sales. So if somebody is wanting to buy the data from the coalition, you need to make a fast decision. If you had a quorum, you might not reach that quorum, you might not sell. So simple majority with permission entry is, we feel, a good design here. And in this scenario as well, the members can exit anytime, but the board members will need a motion passed to leave, or they need to see out the term of their bond, and only then that they can leave. All right, so the decision making, like I said, is via motions. You can accept new board members. It manages you can manage the terms of the sale of the data. You can handle dispute resolution via arbitration or compensation to the buyer or seller. You can set the market price of the data. You can process the purchase requests, make sure that the right people are buying your data, essentially. And you can even flag data quality issues and reputation scores for the sellers of the data. Now, the risks of the design that we have here is with the permission entry and simple majority, there's always the risk that even low participation means motions can get passed. For example, it just takes one vote to pass a certain motion. So it's a pros and cons, right? So the pros here is that participants in this DAO need to be actively involved. And if they don't agree with something, they need to come to the table and vote. If they don't do that, maybe somebody else would vote it through. So that's actually a good thing, we feel. The other risk here is board member centralization. Maybe because it's permission entry, maybe the board members just bring on people that they know and then they control it. But there are ways to mitigate that as well. And the other risk there is the DC fund pool if people start leaving very regularly, it might get unbalanced and might not be able to handle the dispute resolution accordingly. So how do we deal with this? If these sort of issues happen when we deploy, then we might convert this to liquid democracy and add a quorum, and then probably see if that works better in this scenario. All right, it's my last slide here. So I thought I'd just take this opportunity to talk about our design principles. We are big fans of Malak DAO's simplistic sort of design principles. So we have adopted that and kind of added a few more of our own. So our DAO contracts will aim to be super simple. We're not going to try to do too many things in there. And by keeping it simple, we can secure it more. All of these operational elements like applications to join, all of these things will happen off-chain. So the only decisions that happen on-chain are the votes. And this way we can keep these DAO contracts super simple. We are also big fans of Malak DAO's and Ethereum's sort of meme-based development, if you're familiar with that. And also we're a big fan of the exit anytime principle or rage quitting principle. So what that enables you to do is you can build your DAO MVP, you deploy it, you test it, and the fact that there's exit anytime or rage quitting, you can upgrade it later on and get people onto the new DAO. So this is the kind of approach we want to do. We want to iterate really quickly. And finally, the reason why we are actually in this sort of hackathon and the grant process is we don't want to reinvent the wheel and build all of these things. We'd rather align with somebody like Dora Factory and use their palettes in the libraries for things. We use all of these things. We need democracy, we need voting, we need dispute resolution, member management. So we don't want to reinvent the wheel. We prefer to use sort of security audited frameworks for that. And finally is we always question, do we really need additional governance tokens? We might even align our utility token just to be the governance token. And that way we don't have a proliferation of tokens within the platform. So we've been building like crazy for the last 4 months. We already deployed to multiple testnets. So we're already on Ethereum and Polygon. And we are working to deploy into many more chains because we're cross-chain. We're keen to get that whole interaction happening cross-chain. And finally, I encourage everybody who's watching this to come and follow us, reach us, join our communities, add us on Twitter and join our Discord, and you can talk to us directly, and I'm happy to answer any questions or help anybody in any way we can. Thanks for that.
Thank you, Mark, for such comprehensive introduction of Itheum. I'm very happy to see your